Patreon Q&A 156. There's going to be spoilers for all of the series I'm going to be talking about, so tread carefully. Masterkev asks, do you think the One Punch Man series is going to end once God gets revealed, as he is currently the big buildup for the series right now? Or do you think they're going to find another villain that is possibly above God level? So right now, at least, I don't think so. Pretty sure God is going to be like the climax of the series. And that's because I think one has already pretty much laid out how the entire series is going to play out, and I don't think he's been setting up anything that is going to be above God, besides Saitama. But then again, I guess it's almost like a battle manga trope at this point for like the true main villain to randomly emerge in like the last 20 or 15 chapters of the series. Like they've been fighting this one person who you just assumed was the big bad of the series, but it turns out no, it was secretly this other bigger bad the whole time. So that could happen here, like, randomly towards the end of the series or in the final arc, it's revealed that someone has maybe been pulling God's strings, but I just don't think that's likely. I think once God is defeated, the series is pretty much going to be over at that point. Maybe there'll be like 1 or 2, maybe even 3 slice of life chapters or something wrapping up, the story. And also there's just a possibility that one just continues the story after God has been defeated, and then maybe there is another threat out there above him, but I just don't think that's likely either. It goes back to what I said with him having set up the whole entire story already. And also it's going to take really long to just get to the God stuff and finish it anyway, like 10 years. So I'm assuming that by the time the story is completed, it'll be over. Wolfire54 asks, who do you think is the smartest out of the two, Saitama or Flashy Flash? So I think they're smart in their own ways. I mean, if they took like an IQ test, Flashy Flash would probably have a higher score than Saitama, but I think Saitama has this kind of like integral esoteric wisdom that Flashy Flash couldn't have, because only somebody like Saitama would be able to gather this kind of wisdom from the type of experiences that he's had. First Wolf asks, I recently read that Hikari's curse technique is similar to the power of a character from Hunter x Hunter. Have you heard this information, and if so, what character do you think it could be based off of? So this almost always happens with like Jujutsu Kaisen, and I couldn't find one solid theory on Hikari's curse technique being related to a Hunter x Hunter character. It's like a whole bunch of different characters. So that tells me that still at this point, most of us don't really have a good idea of what Hikari's curse technique is. I mean, I'm sure there's some people out there who have accurately already guessed what it is eventually going to be revealed to be, but right now I think the majority of us don't really know. Sean H asks, what do you think will happen with Stain and Overhaul? So I know you asked me this question a couple weeks ago, so we obviously didn't know what was going to happen in the latest chapter with Stain and All Might, so that, shows us what the future of Stain is, or at least mostly. There's definitely going to be more to him, but as for Overhaul, I'm not really sure. Last we saw him, he was like being arrested again, right? And he didn't seem remorseful for Eri or anything. It was mainly just him remorseful for the boss, and he kept, talking about the boss, so I wouldn't be surprised if when Overhaul is retouched on in the story, we'll see him like actually come in person with that boss dude. And then I always assumed that his quirk was going to be stolen by All For One or Shigaraki, but All For One saw him with Lady Nagant. He didn't seem interested in his quirk at that point, so if not All For One, then maybe Shigaraki takes it. I just think that's the ultimate destiny for Overhaul. Dino W asks, the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer is out and it looks amazing. If you were Tom Holland's Spider-Man, would you want your identity to be public? So if I was, no. I think that in the Marvel world, at least, should have the right to keep their identities anonymous. I mean, if DJs and luchadors can, then, why can't superheroes? I'm not saying keep your information from the government, because obviously that's impossible, so you'd have to strike a deal with them. Not even going into the Civil War stuff, just something to where they only know and the public doesn't know. Little Ferrari asks, how do you think a fight between Garo currently in the manga versus Orochi would go down? So I still don't think he'd be able to defeat Orochi, because he's kind of fighting on par with Bang, and that's not like an insult or anything. Bang is obviously incredibly powerful, but talking about Orochi here, and if Garo isn't like completely dominating Bang, then I don't think he has a chance against Orochi, especially at his full power. Like, he was holding back against Garo and just completely dominated him previously. So him going all out, you know, like how he did against Saitama, even in the retcons, I don't think the current Garo would be enough to take him down, but Awakened Garo would for sure. L asks, an anime no content creators talk about is Peach Boy Riverside. Are you watching it or by chance ever heard of it? So I've never heard of this series, and it kind of has a funny name for it being like a dark seinen. And I did look it up and I read the synopsis. It kind of reminds me of Fate's Day Night for some reason, but I probably won't get into this because, you know, I'm sure I've told you this before, but I'm just almost exclusively like battle manga. That's really the only stuff that interests me nowadays. DBZXOPM crossover 2021 asks, what are your opinions on the petition for changing the animators for One Punch Man from the website change.org? If you have heard of it, I was just wondering if it's credible or not. So if by credible you mean the people that made it are legitimately trying to change things, then yeah, I'm pretty sure they are. But if you mean credible as in this making a difference, I don't think so. Anyone can make a petition on change.org, and also the Japanese publishing companies are extremely staunch. Like, even if this petition got 1 million signatures and they were made aware of it, I still don't think they would care. Samurai asks, what are your thoughts on the random samurai that helped Yamato out in the new chapter being somewhat related to Zoro? So I think this is pretty much Zoro's dad for sure, and I don't think it takes away from his character because there was always this quiet significance to Zoro since the beginning of the story. It was only a matter of time before it was going to be revealed, and this is, you know, shown in battle manga anyway. Everyone is going to have some kind of significant lineage or history or greater purpose to their individual world. You brought up Naruto with the Ashura stuff. Well, it's the same thing with One Piece. Luffy is the reincarnation of Joy Boy, which is basically the Ashura of this world. So Zoro being a descendant of the Shimoshi clan doesn't really bother me. I mean, that's the dojo that he was brought up in, so that ties that together. And also it's being heavily implied that he is like the descendant of Ryuma, and obviously he had the whole moment with him at Thriller Bark, so now that ties that together. So it all makes sense, and I think it's awesome in my opinion. Delamante asks, what's your favorite TV shows that aren't anime or comic related? So I got into this a little bit with your other question on Patreon, but I'll say here that Eric Andre's show is probably my favorite of all time. I think it's like a near perfect show. And I know you said not comic related, but I have to put The Boys out there because it's like my second favorite show right now. Like, I like AEW, like the pro wrestling show, Dynamite that comes on TNT. I think that's just like a good show, like not just a good pro wrestling show. But aside from them, I really don't watch too many shows for like TV. I mainly just watch YouTube. Natedawg asks, got any favorite voice actors? Personally, I love Sabat and Hiroshi Kamiya. So to be honest, I don't really have any like specific favorites. I like Chris Sabat as well. He's awesome. But other than that, I don't really like have like individual favorites. I mean, I recognize voices from time to time and I'm like, oh, I like that person. But aside from like Chris Sabat, you know, I don't, no names really come to my mind. Nico L asks, I was thinking, what if Nezu isn't the traitor, since a few things just seem weird about the whole UA barrier thing, as it was described as essentially just a bunch of walls, and if anything gets detected, they could go underground and the whole school will move. To me, that doesn't really sound like it's made to combat awakened decay, but rather regular decay, since as soon as Shiggy started to decay the first set of walls, he would set off the alarm and the school would move, getting everyone out of danger. With how quick awakened decay was shown to be, I feel there's just a little bit of a stretch to think the whole school could move before all of the barriers decay, but I could be wrong. I was also thinking, since it's a very real possibility that the doctor is the one that modified Nezu, did it mean that he was more than likely also the one that Nezu would have a grudge on? So first of all, Nezu says that he was thinking strategically or thinking ahead or something as his excuse for figuring out, you know, awakened decay ahead of time or whatever. And the fact that Tokoyami points it out in that sequence, this all being shown to us, I think is for a reason, and that is to make Nezu suspicious. I think it would be odd if that sequence just ended there and that was just wrapped up and it was just like, oh yeah, Nezu just, you know, figured it out, just given the original information that he had on decay, and that's it. Nothing more to it. That would be weird, right? And as for Nezu having a grudge on Yujiko, I'm not really sure what's 100% going on with Nezu at this point. He could be like a Manchurian candidate or something, or maybe he could be under some kind of hypnosis or something to where he's not like actively being evil, but he's subtly being controlled possibly. And Yujiko's just waiting for the time to fully activate him. Because also we've seen with Kurogiri, he can alter your like personality and your memories. So I wouldn't be surprised surprised if he did that with Nezu. And he made Nezu think that, you know, it was other people that experimented on him and not Yujiko himself. And also that way he could just, you know, blend in more at UA and not be suspicious if he himself isn't even aware that he's the traitor, you know what I mean? Extinction Team 75 asks, what if Shigaraki would touch Goku in his god form? Would it have any effect? So in my opinion at least, I think that if Goku was touched by Shigaraki with no prior knowledge of what was going to happen, he would probably die, right? I don't see why he wouldn't. Goku has shown vulnerability to things way weaker than DK. So that's pretty much it for the video today, guys. Once again, I want to thank all of my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much, especially sticking with me lately. I know I have been consistent with the Q&A, but you know, I'm slowly getting better. But if you would like to be in next week's Q&A, simply check out the Patreon. The link is in the description. And if you liked the video, please give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one.